Rogue One. No way is this going to be kept under 60 seconds, but I'll try my best to keep it short in the post-production. Unlike my other reviews, I will have a few spoilers because the issues people are already having with this movie need to be addressed, and I want to address them. So unlike before, be prepared for a few spoilers. Here we go. Alright, just real quick, I'm a huge Star Wars fan. I've seen all the movies and TV, played many of the games, read many of the books. I'm familiar with the expanded universe that is non-canon, as well as many of the things that Disney is keeping in their canon. I even spoke with Timothy Zahn, who's the originator of the expanded universe, arguably, with the Thrawn trilogy. I was excited to hear that Lucas sold the wars to Disney. While many thought it was going to be bad, I knew that Disney could bring new life and direction to the Star Wars universe in a way that Lucas had been unable to do. Wars has not always produced gold, but I'm judging this as a movie first and a Star Wars movie second. I'm not a fanatic, I'm a fan, and while I give bonus points for Easter eggs and references, it doesn't really make a great movie in and of itself. This movie does a great job of tying in many of the loose threads that Star Wars fans have had for years in regards to A New Hope, and they do a great job using special effects to tie in a few characters from that film. Many people have brought up the question of whether or not old actors should be brought back to life via special effects as in this film. In my opinion, yes, they should, if it's handled appropriately, which I think it was. I'd much rather see these characters as they are presented here rather than have the roles recast. And while the look may take you out at the moment at first, I think a recast would take you out more. I thought it was very well done, and I understand some of the gripes that people have with the appearances, but some people have gone so far as to say that this CGI in the movie ruined it for them. Are you serious? Come on, man.
Come on, man.
Rogue One does really well is give us a unique perspective into the Star Wars universe. This is completely separate from the main saga, which gives it strengths and weaknesses. You realize how separate this movie is from the main saga immediately by the lack of the opening crawl. There is no need for an opening crawl because the opening explains everything you need to know, and the sequel to the movie came out in '77. This movie puts the war in Star Wars and is arguably the only wars movie in Star Wars. Now when it focuses on that war aspect, that's really when the movie shines the brightest. There are a few characters introduced in this film as well, obviously, but truth be told, there really isn't much time for them to really develop. Some characters such as Donnie Yen's character, whose name escapes me at the moment, and his partner, Baze, I believe, they don't really need much explanation of their relationship. It's just kind of spelled out plainly. Other characters like these guys, whom I can't even remember their names, show one of the glaring weaknesses in the movie. There's just too many characters, which equals two dimensions. While each character gets their time to shine in purpose of the plot, there really isn't much time for them to shine as characters. So, I mean, don't get me wrong. There are some great performances that give weight, mainly from these characters here, Jen, Galen, and Cassian. Though even some of their lines fall flat. Jen's motivational speech was probably one of the least motivational speeches I've seen in a movie. The entire monologue fell flat, and I wouldn't even be convinced to walk across the street with her to get tacos if she was hungry. President Pullman, she is not.
We will not go quietly into the night. We will not vanish without a fight. We're going to live on. We're going to survive.
However, Jen was great in other scenes with her father especially, and Cassian was interesting enough to where I really wanted to know more about him. Much like Poe Dameron from Force Awakens, I just wanted to get more and I just wasn't given it. K2SO was enjoyable, which I expected having watched portray him, but ultimately I doubt that people will be able to remember most of these characters when they leave the theater. Even I had to look up some of their names after the film, and I'm usually pretty good about that. They just really aren't used enough or given enough time to breathe. You will refer to this guy as the pilot, the droid, the guy with the beard, Forrest Whitaker, Ip Man. One thing that get major points in my book was that this film had no intentions of creating a sequel. You know, when you're watching a movie that's self-contained and is not straining to expand itself beyond its own story, it creates a lot of enjoyment on my part anyway. I get so tired of seeing half of a movie in theaters like Hunger Games Part 1, or having a perfectly good story weighed down by universe building like Joss Whedon in Avengers Age of Ultron. While the self-contained story was a great bonus, it also succumbed to a little bit of what I refer to as the Last Stand syndrome, in reference to X-Men The Last Stand, the third X-Men movie. Creators seem to think that because there's no sequel planned that the characters don't really matter, so the how and whys of their deaths don't really matter. This takes away from the effects of their deaths and the way that they affect the audience. I think that was the case with a few of the characters in Rogue One. Most of them were handled really well, but there were a few characters I was really like, come on guys, give me something more. Everyone knew how this movie was going to end. The sequel came out in 1977. The Death Star plans made their way into the Hanson Rebellion. That doesn't really take away from the third act at all. I honestly thought the third act was by far the best in the movie. Great special effects on display, but more than that, we get to see some of our characters shine for the first time, really. This reminds me of the video game Mass Effect 2, and if you haven't played that game, then you don't really know what I'm talking about. If you had, basically it's a suicide mission, and this movie sets that up appropriately. There is weight to the end of the movie, but at a certain point, this is especially evident by two characters in the film. They just kind of just seem to give up and die, and I didn't like it.
Darth Vader. Let me talk about Darth Vader. He is awesome. His scenes are awesome. And while limited in this movie, he is very awesome. That is all.
You have failed me for the last time.
One other thing, this is not a spoiler, as it literally has nothing to do with the movie, but there is a tentacle monster that is the most pointless thing. I'm pretty sure it was put in for the sole purpose of having some kind of tentacle porn in the film. The entire scene serves no purpose to the plot, and the special effects are subpar, which comes around to the editing. The editing is not so great. Some of that may be because the reshoots, the direction change, you're trying to fit into some kind of timetable. Whatever the case, there are a few noticeable choppy edits and many scenes in the trailer that were just not even in the film at all. So it kind of makes me wonder what that cut of the movie is, because there's so many things chopped out of it. The fan service. It is handled amazingly in this film, as evident by the director, who was a huge Star Wars fan. Most fans will notice all the little Easter eggs in the movie, and I won't really point them out here, but I will say a couple of the things I loved was the input of the original pilots from A New Hope into the fight, which is something only real hardcore fans will probably notice. And the other thing I liked was the return of Jimmy Smits as Bail Organa from the prequels. Not a big fan of the prequels, but that doesn't mean there wasn't some good stuff in there. And it was cool that they brought him back to kind of bridge the gap between the prequels and the originals and kind of tie everything up kind of better, give some more continuity to it, I guess. All in all, there's a lot of great things in this movie for a Star Wars fan. And the movie will be enjoyed by a non-fan as well. It is not a perfect movie, but there is way more enjoyment to be had than the gripes that people will no doubt be dishing out. I guess, like myself. But I really like the movie. The third act really makes up for the movie that up until that point I considered just to be okay. The third act really saves it, and that's why I'm giving Rogue One 8.5 rogues out of 10.